You should never then move your stop loss until new structure is formed that it would make sense to enter another trade and then move that stop loss. So if I'm looking at my charts and price moves and then it creates some new structure, I was like, ooh, this would be a good place. Like if I wasn't already in a trade, this is where I would want to get into a trade. And if I got into a trade here, I would put my stop loss here. Then that's when I move my stop loss because now I actually have structure. I have a reason for moving my stop loss.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Anarchy Podcast. 99% of traders will never make consistent profits. So why listen to the 99% of advice? On this show, we're going to challenge some of the most hallowed and repeated tenets of trading, and in doing so, set you up to succeed where others fail. Spoiler alert, we don't have a secret strategy or magic wand that will let you skip out on the hard work of learning the markets, but we can debunk viewpoints that are holding you back. If that sounds good to you, come join us. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Anarchy Trading Podcast. Today, we want to talk about your worst enemy, the stop loss. I know you've taken trades and watched as price kept inching closer and closer as you prayed desperately to the trading gods that it would change direction. But in the words of Thanos, dread it, run from it. It arrives all the same. I was talking to Jordan about some questions I had related to my own use of the stop loss. So we thought it would be a good idea to do a deep dive into how to correctly use a stop loss and maybe turn it from your worst enemy into your best friend. Jordan, how you doing? You like that intro?
The intro is great. I love bringing Thanos into it. You know, first of all, before we get into the whole stop loss, I do want to dispel some myths around the stop loss. First of all,
shoot.
No one cares where your stop loss is. The
Dear
banks
Lord.
don't care. Your broker doesn't care. Your prop firm doesn't care. No one is out to hunt your stop loss. I'm sorry. You just suck at trading. So let's get that out of the way first of all. No one cares where your stop loss is. People who tell you, well, I don't trade with a stop loss because I don't want the brokers to be able to hunt my stop loss. No, that's just an excuse for you to not have a stop loss and to lose all your money instantly.
I just saw this on Twitter again, and I see it all the time. It makes me want to jump off a bridge. It like every time. I don't understand why people think that. Like you are a minnow swimming in an ocean full of giants. Like no one cares.
JP Morgan about to drop $1 billion into the market does not care where your $2 trade is.
They just don't, guys. So stop it. So use a stop loss.
Yeah. So that's number one.
It's a good way to start.
That's the number one. Like, listen, no one cares where your stop loss is. No one's hunting it. So, Levi, why don't you kick us off now that we got that thing out of the way, which is a big pet peeve of mine. We can actually discuss, okay, so you have your stop loss. Levi and I are firm believers of having stop losses in place. Now what?
Yeah, so I guess first off, let me just give a brief summary for like, just so we're all on the same page, like what a stop loss is and why you should have one. All right, so like the first start, just real basic. Stop loss is if the price goes against you, it automatically sells. So it automatically gets you out of it if it goes the wrong way. The reason you should always have one is because you don't think clearly when you start losing. No one does, right? You always think smartest before you're in a trade. So just remember this. Next time you're in a trade and you want to make any decision, you want to cut early, you want to take profits early, you want to do anything, right? In the middle of a trade when you've already taken one, just remember, you're not as smart now as you were before. Okay, just remember that. It is always the case. Now, unless new information comes out, sometimes maybe there's some new info that comes out and the market acts weird. And that's why I want to get into this, because I do want to talk about that and moving a stop loss or cutting early, stuff like that. But like, just remember, you're always smartest before. And that's why a stop loss is necessary. And I had on here talk about mental stop losses. So maybe this is a good spot to just say mental stop loss. Having a mental stop loss is having no stop loss, because the whole point of a stop loss is to force your hand, force you out. You say at the beginning, hey, I think price will do this. And if it doesn't do this, I sell. That's all a stop loss is. If price doesn't do what I thought it would do, I leave. And so if you're getting out, if you don't have a stop loss, you're just leaving the door open for your brain to start filling in information and start playing tricks on you. So mental stop loss is no stop loss.
Yeah, totally agree with you. So then we get into the whole number one rule that you will hear everywhere from a lot of people is you never move the stop loss. You never move the stop loss. And Levi, I think you want to challenge that a little bit. The fact is, you should never move your stop loss, but only in one situation and only in one way. So the number one rule when it comes to a stop loss, in our opinion, is that you never move your stop loss farther away. As Levi said, you're much smarter when before you've entered that trade than afterwards. And all of us, there's no one that has not traded that has not moved their stop loss farther and farther and farther away as price just continues to move farther away from the direction they thought it would go, to then realize that they've had a huge loss. So the one thing that you should never do is move that stop loss farther away to put more risk on the table. Say you're risking, 0.5% of your account size, whatever that is. You should never move it farther. So then it's 0.75 or 1%, something like that. That is something you should never do.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, I think this is the number one rule, not just the stop losses. I would put it up there as the number one rule of day trading. I honestly think
risk management.
It's the most important rule, period, hands down. If you you're going to have lots of rules that you kind of for your strategy and things you do for trading. If you ever break this rule, make sure it hurts. Like, go run 10 miles. Go do 1,000 push-ups. Make sure that you feel it the next day, because you cannot break this rule. It is the rule that ruins people who have been trading for 20 years and are successful. Ruin themselves. It happens. Successful people who've consistently followed the rules, they break this rule one time and they can ruin themselves. So
it happens to cocky people, right? Like we talked about it in one of our previous episodes. Essentially, when you're proud, you like, oh, I've been doing this. It happens when you get successful because you're like, well, my analysis, I know this price is going to go this way, so I'm just going to squeak this stop loss a little bit farther, and bam, you're right.
Yep. Yeah, so that's my, when we're talking about moving stop loss further away, that is a absolutely, you never break it. If you break it, make sure you just never do it again, ever. So now that gets me into a question that I talked to you a couple weeks ago, because I've been playing around a little bit with how I move my stop loss closer. Right. So people will, if price starts going your direction, people will move their stop loss to break even. That way, if price comes back down, hey, at least now you're zero risk. Right now, if price goes against you, you don't lose anything. So I've been playing around a little bit with how I do that. Some people don't do that ever. They just set their thing and they leave it. And if it hits their stop loss, fine. If it comes back, they just leave it. But there's a lot of people who very successfully move their stop losses closer. And so I'd been asking you kind of how you've been doing it. And that's how we got into this subject, because I'd moved my stop loss, I think, a little bit early. Price went my way on a trade a couple weeks ago. I moved my stop loss up. And then it came back, knocked me out, and then kept going the way I thought it would go the whole time. And I was like, I got impatient. So Jordan, what's your thoughts? Tell me how you and how our discussion went, and kind of how you view moving your stop loss, and what the best time is, the best place. And if it's ever even, is it ever a good idea, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah. So when we're initially placing our stop loss, where do we put our stop loss? Any normal trader will tell you, well, I put my stop loss in a place where if price hits that, my initial analysis has been invalidated, right?
Sure.
So normally it's going to be based off of structure of some sort. Maybe it's under support and resistance. Maybe it's, whatever you want to base it off of, right? But it's usually based off of structure of some point. If you're one of the people that trade with a fixed stop loss, then I would tell you change your strategy, because honestly, that strategy, I guess it could work for some people, but especially beginners, that takes nothing into account of price action, right? And we are price action traders. So telling me you always trade with a, 20 pip stop loss or a 20-point stop loss doesn't really make sense to me, because you base it off of structure. So let's say you are a trader who uses structure as where you put your stop loss. You should never then move your stop loss until new structure is formed that it would make sense to enter another trade and then move that stop loss, right? So if I'm looking at my charts and price moves and then it creates some new structure, I was like, ooh, this would be a good place. Like if I wasn't already in a trade, this is where I would want to get into a trade. And if I got into a trade here, I would put my stop loss wherever, here. Then that's when I move my stop loss, because now I actually have structure. I have a reason for moving my stop loss. As Levi said, I mean, guilty as charged. I do this quite a bit as well. As Levi would tell you, the data actually shows I hit break even on my trades about 35% of the time, because I trade with momentum. So I move my stop losses early a lot of times. But the fact is that there's no point a lot of times, if you move your stop loss early, price is always going to come back. Like the market is moving. Price is always going to come back and retest your entry point normally if you have good entries. So make sure that you're not moving your stop loss until new structure is formed. Don't get afraid of having your stop loss hit, right? Because again, like if you move your stop loss, like you go in profit and then you move your stop loss. This is something that I had a guy that I was coaching. Like I noticed that a lot of his trades, like he was risking like 0.5%, but then a lot of his trades he was losing by 0.25%. I was like, why are you losing all these trades at like 0.25%? He's like, well, I moved my stop loss. So he was moving his stop loss, not based off of structure, but it's like, oh, starting to go in profit. So I'll just move my stop loss a little closer, but it wasn't based off of structure. And so price was just coming and knocking him out again. So never move your stop loss unless it's based off of structure. That way you have a solid reason, and you can look on your charts and you can look on your journals about why did I put my stop loss where I did.
I like that. I like that a lot, because this is where kind of our discussion gone the other day, because I'd moved my stop loss before any new structure had formed, right? So I took a trade, price goes flying in my direction where I thought it would go, and I moved my stop loss to break even immediately, knowing though that of course price most likely will draw back at some point. Like you have to give it some room. And if you're not like, and this comes back to kind of pride, which is you want those wins. You want to win and you don't want to lose. And it hurts to lose because then you feel like a loser. And so you can get really, really preoccupied with not losing so much that you miss out on a lot of potential wins. And so I'd seen that in my own trading recently, and that kind of, I appreciate and you'd said that, and I was like, looking over what I'd been doing in my journal, a lot of my stop losses weren't based off of structure. My stop loss moves were based off of me not wanting to take a hit, and that, yeah, that's problematic in the long run. While if you're patient, wait for price to pull back and now give you some sort of a new structure point, that gives you a lot better place to put it. I absolutely love that. So I had another question here, because I just had this happen today. so we've talked about stop losses. Your stop loss is hit, moving your stop loss. So should you ever get out of a trade before your stop loss is hit, right? So you take a trade, you set your stop loss at the next, support area or whatever, and then price just kind of consolidates for a while, and it's hanging around in, kind of break even, maybe losing a little bit, and it's just not looking I don't know. It's just not looking good anymore. And so, is there ever a time where you should cut early? I just did that yesterday. I cut early before it hit my stop loss. And then I was kicking myself because then, of course, price went the direction I thought it would, and I would have won. And so I took a small loss instead of getting my win. Is there ever time for that? Is there, or is it kind of just sit it and leave it until at least you're in profit?
My opinion, personal preference. So you get into a trade for a specific reason. Consolidation doesn't usually change that, right? So if you look at a chart and you entered a trade for a certain reason, consolidation does not usually invalidate that trade because, okay, it's a period of consolidation. You wouldn't enter in consolidation, but if you're already in consolidation, is it a reason to get out? I would say personal preference. I can see reasons for it and reasons against it. If I enter in a trade and then if you look at the Dow yesterday, it just was wicking all over the place. There was just a bunch of wicks during the London session. Nothing was happening. And, I stayed in it because if I had been in profit, I actually would have moved my stop loss to break even and just got out, right? But if I'm already in a loss, then just gonna stay because like, okay, I cut it and I save myself a 0.2% or something. But like I'm already in the trade, I'm already gonna lose some. So I actually do this. If I'm in profit and things are consolidating, I'll move my stop loss to break even if it's just, a few points above it, because I'm like, why not? It's consolidating. It's now a crapshoot which way it's going to go. I'm going to get out. This is just me personally. If I'm actually though negative and now it's consolidating, I just let it go. I'm like, what's the big deal? I entered this trade. If I lose it, I lose it. And if I win it, I win it. But I'm not going to purposely take a half loss. Like if I'm in profit, I can take a zero. That's no problem to me. But why take a half loss when honestly I'm already in it? My analysis did say it was going to go up. So why don't I just trust it? So yeah, I mean, that was
Hmm.
the long way of me saying personal preference. But for me, if I'm losing, I don't. If I'm winning, I do.
I gotcha. No, that makes sense. Like I've done this before. And I don't hate doing it. Like my personal thing is if it consolidates for a really long time, where it's like I'll take some trades. It's happened to me before where I'll take a trade. My trades typically last half an hour. And then I'll be in there for 3, 4 hours and it's just sitting there, like consolidating. And I'm just like, okay, let me get out because now it's just, now I'm just flipping a coin. When I looked at the trade I took the other day, again, I'm just trading right now on a trading some forex, and these are longer form trades. They're longer trades. I'm trading on some higher frames just because of the commissions and everything, the fees and everything that it's involved. You kind of have to do higher time frames for forex. So I'm doing some longer stuff, and I realized, yeah, I sat around for an hour or two and it didn't do a whole lot, but I am trading on like half an hour candles here. So comparatively speaking, I should have just let it keep playing. I do like your thing of, hey, if you're going to take a loss, you're going to take a loss, and the point of kind of taking a half loss. Some people are okay with it. I kind of prefer that sometimes, just taking a little bit of a loss than taking, risking, like hoping. And for me, I see it as kind of practice in a way. And I don't know whether maybe this makes sense to you or not. Let me know what your thoughts are. But like, I do like I like being able to practice taking a loss and not hoping, because it's really common to just hope when you're losing. And so it actually, for me, it's very difficult to go, okay, you know what? I'm hoping it goes my way, but I'm just going to end it now. Because most people take profits early. They don't take losses early. And so for me, there's a bit of it is a little bit, um, you know, masochistic, but it's trying to kind of teach myself to take kind of small losses instead of taking small wins. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. And that's why I said personal preference on that one. And I think it's kind of cool to hear that we disagree a little bit or have a different viewpoint on it. Cause sometimes I feel
Mm.
you and I trade too close to the same to offer different viewpoints. But yeah, for sure. Like feel free, like just never move your stop loss farther away, as we said.
Right.
You can experiment, move your stop loss, look at the data. If the data then shows, you look at your journal. If the journals show that you're moving them too early, then adjust. But the fact is, don't be afraid to experiment. Just never break the number one rule. The number one rule, never move your stop loss farther away. We've all done it. We've all blown accounts because of it. And we want to save people from as much loss and pain as possible, but we're telling you right now, we know how the brain works. You'll do it anyways, and then you'll learn. So
Yeah.
yeah, keep those stop losses in there and keep those trades going.
Yeah, I mean the stop loss when I mentioned earlier, like in the intro, stop loss being your worst friend. It is a lot of people's worst friend, but it really is it's your best friend, right? It's not your worst enemy. I kept saying your worst friend. It's not your worst enemy. It's your best friend. Like the stop loss is what saves a good trader. It's not the take profit that is your best friend. It feels good, feels better, but the stop loss is what's going to be there when you're at your lowest. It's going to be there when there's nothing else. It's going to be there to keep you from killing yourself. So respect it, treat it with the respect and it deserves, and it'll serve you well.